you are watching Voice of Canada and this is Haroon. The Canadian Armed Forces appears to be struggling to retain and recruit people.
Ever since Canada's high-profile mission in Afghanistan created a surge in job applications, more people have been leaving the forces than signing up. A 2016 Auditor General's report showed numbers shrank from almost 68,000 in 2012 to 66,400 by 2016, and the decline continues. The Forces Recruiting Centre in Borden, Ontario says as of September 30th, there are fewer than 65,000 regular force members. With an attrition rate of between 7 to 8% a year, replacing those who leave the forces with new recruits has been a losing battle. The military blames the pandemic, which made it tougher to process applications.
Not as much training was happening, so not as many positions that we could enroll people into because of the same complications.
But even ready-made professionals are avoiding the forces. When the pandemic brought commercial airlines to a virtual standstill, it opened the door for pilots to defect to the Air Force. This defense analyst says fewer than a handful made the jump.
The lesson for me is if you couldn't get them back in big numbers in this circumstance, then you are just utterly in the hurt locker.
A high-priority recruiting target is also slipping away, increasing the percentage of women in the regular and reserve force from 16% to 25% by the year 2026, a goal some suggest has gone from ambitious to impossible.
I'd be very surprised if the current sexual misconduct crisis didn't have a chilling effect on recruitment, especially with women.
In fact, two of the force's higher-ups forced to step aside, Lieutenant General Stephen Whalen and Vice Admiral Hayden Edmondson, were in charge of recruiting.
This is a challenging time period for the Canadian Armed Forces.
Like other employers, recruiting sessions have been moved online.
Train for your true calling with the Canadian Armed Forces.
Marketing messages have not changed.
All of these factors do not help the current strain in terms of military personnel and the personnel shortages, and it's one of many stressors on the organization in this moment.
A new ad campaign aimed at women was to have begun this month. It's been delayed. So has a new strategy for persuading members to stay, as the military struggles to build for the future while reckoning with the past.
Canada's Minister of Environment and Climate Change, Jonathan Wilkinson, said Monday that the developed world failed to deliver on its commitment to raise $100 billion by 2020 in order to help poor countries fight climate change.
Let's be clear, when the OECD brought out its most recent report, everybody reading that report knew that we were not going to achieve the goal in 2020. And certainly there was disappointment at that point in time. And I think there was also fear that that goal would not be achieved within a relevant time frame. And what we have done through the work that has been undertaken is to demonstrate very clearly, is to raise the level of ambition on the part of many countries, many donor countries, and to be able to demonstrate very clearly that this goal will be achieved. And in fact, it will be overachieved in 2024 and 2025, such that, as Jochen has said, the overall number for the period will be close to, or perhaps above, the $100 billion number. By and large, the mobilization of the $100 billion for 2020 fell short because largely private sector mobilization was lower than we anticipated. So money flowing in for climate finance that's enabled through through public expenditures was lower than what we anticipated it would be. That the public side of this, in terms of contributions from government, was not far off what folks had actually committed to. And what we have done through the course of this exercise is raise the level of ambition from public finance going forward without making more aggressive assumptions around private sector mobilization. Now, to be clear, we do need to see the private sector step up. We do need to see more funds mobilized. At the end of the day, the scale of the problem with respect to both adaptation and mitigation is such that we need to see trillions of dollars that mobilize for this, not $100 billion. But what we have done in this report is actually raise the level of ambition with respect to the contributions that donor governments and countries make. And concurrently, we know that there's an enormous amount of work on the private sector side going on by people like Mark Carney and others, where we hope to see significant additional private sector mobilization. But we haven't assumed that in the numbers. And in fact, what this shows is a greater level of ambition on the part of donor countries going forward. And so I think from the perspective of, do we have greater confidence today versus what we had before this process was underway? I would say absolutely we have much greater confidence that the goal that was agreed upon will in fact be achieved, and in fact will be overachieved beyond 2023. I think that's very good news, and I think that perhaps through this process we've moved the bar in terms of how we can provide greater confidence and transparency going forward. When the OECD numbers came out recently, it was very clear that it was extremely unlikely that the 2020 number would be achieved. And to the United Kingdom's credit, it actually made the decision that much more needed to be done to ensure that goal would be achieved within a relevant time frame. And that's why Ms. Sharma, asked Germany and Canada to essentially lead this process. Is we needed to, in the aftermath of the OECD numbers, to be able to actually demonstrate that this could be achieved and when it would be achieved in order to build trust. And as my friend Jochen said, we have met with developing countries as well as developed countries through this process. Of course, everybody is disappointed that it wasn't met in 2020. But I think the critical point that the UK recognized is we had to, going into COP, be able to find ways to raise the level of ambition on climate finance such that we could point to when that number would in fact be achieved and that in fact it would be overachieved going forward. And we have done that through this process. And I think that's an incredibly important part of building trust in advance of what is a critically important COP.
For the second year in a row, Canadians will once again celebrate Halloween in a pandemic, but this time around, many of us are vaccinated against COVID-19.
Trick or treat!
Experts say holidays like Halloween are a treat for retailers, helping them benefit from growth, which they didn't experience as much during the pandemic.
It's not so great for retailers that depend on these holidays to actually make money.
Lockdowns, pandemic measures, and risks around COVID-19 kept many Canadians at home last year on Halloween. Personal finance expert Rabina Ahmed Haq says this helped many consumers save.
Spending on those extras like Halloween candy and decorations.
This year, with less restrictions in effect and the majority of the population vaccinated, Canadians are feeling more comfortable stepping out for Halloween.
Every indication is that Canadians want to get out there and have a good time again.
According to a national study by HelloSafe.ca, Canadians are planning to spend about $68 per person this year. That's up from 36% last year when people spent about $50 per person.
Half of it should go to costumes. Within the rest will go for buying pumpkins, candies, chocolates, and also to activities.
Alexandra Disute says before the pandemic, Canadians spent about $90 per person in 2018 and $97 in 2019. He says the dip we're seeing this year has to do with restrictions and vaccination status of kids.
Related to the sanitary restrictions that are still going on across the country.
Ahmed Haq says it's also because Canadians have become more mindful about their spending.
That's kind of helped us ground ourselves in many ways and see what's really important to us, see what we really value, what we want to spend money on.
She says inflation may also be a factor.
Inflation is the highest it's been in 20 years. And so Canadians are just generally concerned about their cost of living going up.
Ahmed Haq expects Canadians to spend more freely on holidays and other extra expenses starting next year if the pandemic wraps up.
Happy Halloween.
Sharmeen Somani, Global News.
Edmonton's Melina McQuad helps people connect with nature through slow walks, guided and solo meditations, and to foraged tea, all part of a quest to improve their mental health.
I'm a certified forest therapy guide, and I basically take people on mindful experiences in the forest. Today we'll be doing a bit of a guided meditation. We'll be doing a slow-paced walk, paying attention to what's moving around us. And we will also be doing a bit of a sit spot where people will sit quietly and just sort of be part of the forest. And we'll be closing with a tea ceremony, as we always do. Forest therapy is all about fostering a connection with the land and a relationship with the land and the forest. And so we do it by guiding people through sensory invitations that immerse all of their senses in their surroundings and their feelings, and just kind of checking in with where they are at that moment and really connecting deeply to the natural spaces that they're visiting. Yeah, it's a great chance to slow down. It's very relaxing and rejuvenating.
You know, just so used to a fast-paced environment. And driving here, I was stuck in traffic and I was looking at the clock the whole time, worried I was going to be late. And then as soon as I got here, it was like pump the brakes and take it easy, take everything in. I just think it's really important to get outside sometimes, just disconnect from all the things going on in life, get away from electronics, get away from computer, get away from emails, and just get yourself grounded.
I've had people tell me that they feel happier, more relaxed, more energized. They're better able to concentrate. Our river valley system, in my opinion, is really like the jewel of our city. And this is just another way to experience it and develop a deeper relationship with these wonderful natural spaces that we have.
The government of Nunavut has asked Ottawa for a mobile water treatment center to provide Iqaluit with clean drinking water. Residents have been drawing water from a river, but it is starting to freeze, Iqaluit Mayor Carnival said.
One of our top stories today, let's return to that. Iqaluit has extended its local state of emergency because of the water crisis. Council voted unanimously during an emergency meeting last night. They initially declared the state of emergency last week after city staff found evidence of contamination in the treated water supply. Tap water deemed unsafe to drink, and for pregnant women and for infants, unsafe even to bathe in.
Government of Nunavut asked them yesterday to bring in a small treatment center. I believe that I believe the government of Canada has that capability to drop those in, and what that would do is, one of the problems is our river that we're taking water from to deliver to homes on top of the bottled water. That river is freezing, so it's getting into a dire situation where it's going to be hard to deliver to houses. So this treatment center, if it's available, will help us deliver to about half of our community that is on truck services already, and at least those people will have treated water in their homes for the time being, and reduce the work that our staff are doing.
A delivery driver in British Columbia who was shot 7 times and frustrated by the slow progress of the investigation by RCMP.
On January 10th, Nader Ahmadirad pulled up to a house in Coquitlam to drop off a delivery as a DoorDash driver. Suddenly, his car was surrounded by 4 people with guns.
So
first when I saw them with the guns, I couldn't believe it. I thought it was some kind of joke. But when I saw blood coming out and bullet holes in my clothes, I realized, no, it was not a joke, it was real.
Ahmadirad says police told him more than 40 bullets were found at the scene. 7 struck him in the face, the arm, his side.
So I'm still in shock because we migrated to Canada, to this beautiful city, to have peace of mind, safety, security, and I couldn't believe it.
He says officers told him he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that at least one of the people in the house were known to the police. Physically, he's recovering. Mentally, it's a bigger challenge.
Any kind of noise scares me. I get frightened. I'm scared of the darkness.
Over the past 10 months, Ahmadirad says he's heard very little from the Coquitlam RCMP. Every time he reaches out, he's told there's no update and no suspect. His mind plagued, knowing that the people who shot him are still out free.
I don't know why the process is going slowly, and they put the public safety at risk, and also my safety could be at risk.
The Coquitlam RCMP say it's a complex investigation and officers continue to gather evidence. Police understand when someone has been affected that the process may seem to take too long for them. Police need to do a number of things during an investigation, and all this takes time. Ahmadirad says the entire process has been made more difficult as a new immigrant, with no local support system and a language barrier. But still, He's committed to getting justice.
Keep watching Voice of Canada for further updates. Visit our website voiceofcanada.tv.